on this episode of the Morning Star Podcast.
The more time that you spend with people, the more you know them, the more trust you have built up with them, and the more that you can speak into their lives and allow them to speak into your life. And so when you're in full-time ministry, it takes more effort, more work to build those relationships outside of the church. It was very easy when I was a student or when I was just serving because I had a lot of connections with people in various other places. And so I have to be more intentional about meeting our neighbors and talking to our people than I used to in the past. It's not just about what we receive, it's about what we receive and then in turn can give out to others. God is at work in lots of different places, and so we can go out and we can partner with a Salem Angels. We can partner with a Salem for Refugees. When we do that, that's a wonderful thing, to partner with what God is already doing.
Hey there, Morning Star family and podcast listeners. So glad to have you here on the podcast. My name's Cooper Anderson, and I'm the creative director here at our church. Just wanted to drop in here to give a little bit of an announcement and update on the podcast. Our wonderful host, Jacob Mayhew, who helped to get this ministry off the ground and has told so many amazing stories here at our church, is actually going to be stepping down from his role as the podcast host. All positive changes here. He and his wife recently got married, and they've been really praying about where God would have them to do ministry together as a couple. And I think that's such a great thing to do for couples, to pray together about where God would have them to serve and grow. And so they have decided to step on going forward into what God has called them to, and we are blessing them going forward. All positive things. We're so excited for him and grateful for the things that he's done in our church, the ways that he's served, the stories that he's told. You know, as a listener, how much that has benefited you and our church family. And so, yeah, this is a great thing. And going forward, what it means for you as a listener is that the frequency of episodes that we post might come down a little bit, but the heartbeat of this podcast is still very much alive, and we'll still be posting episodes. So the heartbeat of this podcast is to tell the stories of what God is doing in our church. And maybe when you come in on a Sunday, you might not know the testimony of the person sitting 5 seats away from you and what God has done in their life, but it's powerful. You might be wondering more about one of the ministries that we partner here with, either locally or globally, and you might be wondering what really goes on in a life group or in women's ministry and student ministries. And we're going to continue to tell the stories of what God's doing in those places. So continue to watch and listen to these episodes. We'll keep posting them. Thank you for being a listener. And without further ado, let's get into our episode today with Mike Lee hosting. He's a great congregation member of our church, and with Jared Boltman, one of our staff members. And they're going to talk about Jared, his testimony, and what it means to live on mission. So let's get into that now.
Welcome to the Morning Star Podcast, where we engage in meaningful conversations that display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life.
Welcome to the Morning Star Podcast. My name is Mike Lee. I've been privileged to attend here for more than a decade now, and I'm here with my pal, Associate Pastor Jared Boltman. How are you today, Jared?
Fantastic, Mike. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you on board. And I think that people see you around the campus all the time, but they can't quite put their finger on what exactly your title is and job responsibilities are. So can you give us the big picture?
Yeah, super glad to be here and super excited for this opportunity. Yeah, so I do a lot of things that are off the stage and out of the building and in the community. So I oversee our life groups ministry. I oversee our global missions and local outreach, as well as pastoral care. So that's a lot of hospital visitations and elderly care communities and visiting people in their homes and those kinds of things. So it's all stuff that's kind of off of our campus.
For what it's worth, from personal experience, I want to thank you personally, Jared, for all of the times that you've made visitations for my family over the years. And you just bring such a comfort and a peace of God with you. And I don't think everyone's equipped to do that. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Mike. It's an honor. I'd love to walk alongside people in their ups and the downs and joys and challenges of life.
Well, anyone who knows Jared Bultman knows your heart, but did that come with time, or is that fairly easy or natural for you to say, drop in on somebody at a hospital?
I actually would say that I think through some challenges early in life, I learned that pretty quickly it's good to come alongside people and just care for them and just kind of be there no matter what. So I think that is something that I learned early, and probably I see a lot of value in that.
Is there ever a need to just be as opposed to imparting wisdom or experience or a good Bible verse or something like that?
Yeah, when I train people to help with pastoral care visitations and things, one of the things we talk about is just the act of being there and sitting beside somebody and listening to them and praying with them and walking with them, so to speak, is so important. There are times where sharing a Bible verse is important. There are times where asking questions are important, but just to be there and practicing being in the presence of somebody as we are to practice being in the presence of God, walking with God. So it's just kind of an extension of that. I would say it's very important. Yeah.
Do you have to do these frequently? How often does this happen that you'd have to go on a visitation to someone's home or to a hospital room or a senior facility?
Yeah. So being about just one part of my job, overseeing life groups as well and global missions and local outreach, I certainly don't do all of it. I have a team of great people that go do visits, and so it completely varies. There may be times where I'm doing 3 or 4 in a week, and there may be a time where I don't do any in a whole month. So it just depends on how things are going. I think usually it's interesting around Thanksgiving to Christmas time. There's quite a bit more. There's a lot more crises that happen, and unfortunately, more people are passing away. It seems like in that month consistently than any other month. I think the stress and the busyness of family time and lots of expectations and the year wrapping up, there seems to be quite a bit of crisis at that time. So I tend to do a lot more then.
So is it difficult to find people to join your team to go on these visitations? Because you can't be everywhere all at once. You need people that you can trust and who are available.
Yeah, there's various levels of, I would say, priority. Like, so if something is, somebody has just passed away, they need a pastor right now, or they need somebody right now. Right at that point, you just kind of drop everything and you go. And so that's usually going to be me or potentially another staff member. A lot of our staff do a lot of these visits as well. And so that's important to have a big team of people doing it. If it's somebody that had a knee surgery and they need somebody, that doesn't have to be an immediate need. So we call on a team of people, and if somebody can go, great. If somebody can't, then we've got somebody else. But I look for people who just have a heart to be in the presence of somebody, and they want to serve. They want to just be helpful and do whatever they can. And the more broad somebody is in their willingness to help, that's the kind of people that are a good fit for this. And they're willing to listen and just be there with somebody and encourage them. Encouragement is very important. Oftentimes when you go visit somebody, they have a hard time seeing how God is at work. I would say in over, 350, 400 visits now through the years that I've done this, I would say that every single time I've visited somebody, I have seen how God has connected dots in the ways that he is at work, but 90% of the time they can't see it. And so listening well and encouraging them with what God is doing is important. So helping people to see that too.
It's funny, when we come to church on Sundays, it's easy for us to forget that church goes on all week long. So thank you for all that you do in front of the congregation, but also behind the scenes and remotely, just to be the hands and feet of Christ, Jared. And there will be another podcast that we're going to schedule where we're going to center on life groups. But would you like to give a brief, big picture of the importance, needs, and definition of a life group at a big church?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I would say, so we're kind of in this transition phase where we used to have community groups, and community groups were great. We had those for decades here, and they've been a huge, important part of people's lives, and that's been wonderful. And the change to life groups is not just a name change. If we were to summarize it in one sentence, we would say that community groups facilitate discussion around the message, whereas life groups form disciples around the mission. And so that is just a succinct way to share the difference. Whereas community groups were really good about knowing and studying God's word, there wasn't much of an expectation to move beyond the knowledge of it to practice it or live it out in our daily lives and in our community outside of our group. Whereas now that we have a clear mission, vision, and values as a church, that we're leading people to pursue a Jesus-first life, that goes beyond just knowing it. It goes to a heart that's transformed and then a life that's lived out in action in our community. And so our life groups are taking what we learn and what we know and what we've studied, which is essential and important, and then taking those next steps to live our faith out in our community. And that happens either with serving in a missional outreach way. It happens with seeing the mission of our vocation, that God has called each of us into a different role and a different job, and that's not something that is unimportant to God. He values that, and so we can be on mission where we work and where we live in our communities. So that's just kind of a basic overview of what our life groups are. So it's we're in that journey of living out more fully that mission that God has called us to.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to our future podcast centering on life groups. But something I've noticed about you, Jared, is you use the word missions a lot. So did you always have a heart to reach the lost, a heart for missions?
I would say early in my time as a believer, I was focused on the internal, on the church building, the church body, the people of God. But always there was an extension of that to go out. I remember my first few years here at Morning Star. So you've been here for over a decade, right? I started coming here in December of 1999. So long time ago. And I remember being part of Credo, the college group at the time. And there was always an emphasis on missions and going out. And so I remember it was very formative for me, because as I was just thinking, having grown up going to church, I grew up going to a church that it was only that building. It was only those people in that building. That was the entire focus. So that was, I would say, the baggage that I came into Morning Star with, but quickly learned that our faith lived out around us is important. And so we would go on mission trips. I remember going to Mexico a couple of different times, different locations in Mexico. I remember going to the Dominican Republic. I remember a mission trip to, of all places, Salt Lake and Park City, Utah. But it was during the 2002 Olympics. And so there were people that came from all around the world, and we had conversations with Buddhists and Muslims and people of the Hindu faith. And we had conversations with Catholics and other Protestants like us, and lots of Mormons. And so we had these amazing conversations and got to learn more about different cultures. So those are some very early and formative things in my time as a believer. I became a believer just a few months before starting to attend Morning Star. So I became a believer in April of 1999. And then by December of 99, started coming to Morning Star. And then those mission trips were in 2000, 2001, and 2002. So early in my time as a believer, I got exposure and experience to seeing how God is at work in different places around the world.
I always love hearing people's stories about how they came to know the Lord or when their faith became their own. So in your case, it seems like you only received Jesus into your heart a brief period of time before attending Morning Star. How did that come about?
Yeah. So I still remember it. It was Thursday night at a Bible study, April 22nd, of 1999. And I had gone through a difficult season in my life, a time where I was depressed and not eating and not sleeping. And but the Lord had placed people in my life, friends that I was working with, that were there for me and invited me to attend a Bible study. I went 4 weeks in a row before I accepted Jesus as my Savior. But that, before that, I'd grown up going to church. My parents were divorced when I was 5. Dad wanted nothing to do with religion or church or God. My mom faithfully took us, my brother and I, to church every other weekend. We were there every other weekend. And every time we were with her, we would go to church, and grew up seeing how in that particular church, God was at work, but it was not for me. It was formal, liturgical. It was very, very high church, very structured, and something that was great for an older generation, but not for me as a young person and then a teenager. Stopped going to church for a while. Then the Lord got a hold of me when I was 21. And so that Bible study that I was at, that 4th week that I had gone 4 weeks in a row, I saw God at work in people's lives. I saw him breaking down walls and barriers and things that people had put up. And I saw him, I saw in other people's hearts and in minds and in their lives, a God who loved them and cared for them. And I deeply wanted that. So when I finally relented of my own way and turned over to the Lord, he was there.
So at this point in your life, Jared, where were you working that these coworkers came from who invited you to join them at Bible study?
Yeah. I was an assistant manager at a movie theater, and my friend Levi Wilson, who is still one of my closest friends to this day, invited me to this Bible study. And the first week I went, I thought, wow, these people are crazy, and these things they're talking about, these things they believe are just crazy. But the Lord slowly broke that down in my hard and chiseled heart. It was just a cold experience that I was having of not wanting to open up. But he worked through my friend Levi, who's a great person and still close. And so he walked me through that and continued to work at that place for a couple more years. And so was able to dive into a good Bible study, to people at Morning Star then shortly after that, because a lot of them had attended, the people that were at that Bible study had attended Morning Star. And so the connection was, I was working at a movie theater. My friend Levi was working there. He invited me to this Bible study. He and other people were attending Credo, the college group here at Morning Star. And so as I got to know more of them in that Bible study, started hanging out with them, seeing how God was at work in their lives. It took me from April of 99 to December of 99 to start coming to church, because my only view of church was the church that I grew up in. Again, very formal and high liturgy and lots of just the stuff that did not interest me. I thought that's how all churches were. I was very ignorant. And so coming to Morning Star and being welcomed in and being able to freely worship God was a new and unique experience for me. But having those people that could come alongside me with that was so important.
I think it's wonderful that your coworker invited you to a Bible study, and then a few weeks later, you came to fully receive the Lord, even though you had grown up in the church on and off, but at that stage of your life, it just wasn't clicking. It wasn't for you. So who at Morning Star, or what experiences really helped shape and mentor you?
Yeah, so Levi and other friends that were a part of that. It's so fun to look back and see, because a lot of them have gone on to be involved in ministry at other places, pastors. Chris Mead was a pastor here for quite a few years. He's a pastor in Colorado. Matt Porter is another pastor here in town. Those guys were part of that group. Cyrus Ratman is also a pastor, I believe, in Kaiser now. So it's so fun to look back and see all those people that were involved and what God was doing. But also the college pastor, John Nadler, was very influential on me for quite a long time, and is still a very good friend and somebody that I still look up to a lot and trust him. And he's lieutenant colonel in the Army. He's a chaplain. And so he left the pastoral ministry to continue in ministry to soldiers as a chaplain, and he's been amazing. So God has just placed so many different people at so many different times.
I love hearing your story, Jared. So now that you are an associate pastor here at Morning Star Community Church, what experiences have you taken from being mentored that you use to raise others up?
Yeah, I think it's so important to not feel like or try to do everything on my own. I want to include as many people as possible, and I have to with the different things that I'm doing. So I love to pass on just understanding of what somebody's gift is and encourage people to help them see, like we do in the hospital visitations, to help people see what God is doing in their life groups, to help people see what God is doing in missions, and to share those stories, to encourage people and to share those stories and to let them try and fail. Because when you fail, you're learning something about the spiritual gifts that God has given you. It's helping people see the spiritual giftings, the experience that they've had, their interests and passions, because all of those things can be pieced together as part of a beautiful picture of what God wants for somebody's life. And so when we can help people put that together, then they can really thrive and flourish in whatever God's called them to do. Sometimes people are so hesitant to step into a role because they feel like they're not equipped for it, or they're not, 100% prepared. But man, just walking that path with God is a beautiful thing, knowing that you can fail and knowing that you can stumble and knowing that it might not be as good as somebody else, but it's just what God has prepared them for. So that's a big part of it.
I love the fact that you don't seem to be someone who's prone to be a micromanager. You're willing to let someone run with the ball even if they trip.
I have to constantly work towards that. Yes, I think my default is to be a micromanager, so I try to avoid that as much as I can.
It's got to be tough to turn off, though, especially when you see someone who might be going in a direction that you don't think is going to be the most effective.
Yeah, but like we have 20-something life groups, and I can't be there to be in each session and see how each person leads. That would not be healthy. That wouldn't be wise. That wouldn't be good. I trust each of those leaders to do the job that God has prepared and equipped them for. But I also don't want to be so disconnected that I'm being negligent as a leader. So we try to have coaches, life group coaches, to help connect with people, to be that extension. With our missions ministry, of our global and our local partners. And so we're trying to build up a team, a missions team that can be an extension to help with communication and encouragement for each of those partners. So those are constantly teams that we're trying to build up and prepare and equip and train so that we can have that balance of being involved in their lives, but not overstepping those boundaries and micromanaging, because that's definitely not healthy.
Well, you certainly have a great missional heart. So are you more likely to feel comfortable serving locally or far away?
I try to be present in whatever situation I find myself. So I have loved traveling and being far away and being able to do missions work in Mexico a couple different times, and in Salt Lake City and in Dominican Republic. And I've been on tours, trips that we've had at the church. And when I was in seminary, to Israel, Jordan, Egypt. I've been to Greece. I've been to Turkey. And so I even will try to take those opportunities to have a conversation with somebody, listen to their story, get to know them. So I think that's important, but also right here where we're at in Salem, in our community, in our neighborhoods here, and to get to know my neighbors. I'm trying to do a more intentional job with that. Get to know them, hear their stories, invite them over, have conversations, and be present in our community. So I don't know that I have a preference either way, to be honest. I just want to be thankful and appreciate every opportunity that the Lord does give me. And so I know some people do have a preference, and that's great. The Lord does call and equip and prepare some people to go, and that's very clear for some people. Others he calls, prepares, and equips to be very close, maybe right at their job where they work, or in their home, or in their neighborhood. And that's wonderful for some people. I feel like for me, I'm able to do each of those. I don't really have a preference.
That's good. You could play both sides of the coin and do it well. So when it comes to the people working in missions today, I've noticed that recently we've added more outside outreaches that we're assisting, whether it's the Lights at Morning Star benefiting Salem Angels, which helps out foster families, or Agape Camp came to speak not too long ago here at church. How do you decide what would be a good fit for Morning Star to partner alongside versus starting our own ministry here?
Yeah, it's a good question. It all fits within our mission, vision, and our values. So as we're leading people to pursue a Jesus first life, I feel like it's always important to clarify what that means. That does not mean that the church staff is leading everybody else to pursue a Jesus first life and that it ends there. When we talk about that, we're talking about making disciples who make disciples who make disciples. And so we as a church staff are leading our leaders and our key volunteers to pursue a Jesus first life, who are then in turn leading and preparing and equipping the people that attend their groups to pursue a Jesus first life. And those attenders are then leading their families and their neighbors and their coworkers to pursue a Jesus first life. So it's not just about what we receive, it's about what we receive and then in turn can give out to others. So when we look at things through that grid, I think oftentimes within not just Morning Star, but most churches in the West, we often want to create our own maybe outreaches and structures, but we miss that God is already at work in a lot of different places. And so there are so many things that we could be doing. We can't do too much. We can't do everything, first of all. So we need to be okay with not doing everything. But I'm very comfortable seeing that God is at work in lots of different places. And so we can go out and we can partner with a Salem Angels because they're the experts at providing community for people in the foster care community. We can partner with a Salem for Refugees because they're the experts at helping people to become integrated in society and become thriving members of our community who have come from different countries. When we do that, that's a wonderful thing, to partner with what God is already doing.
That's important to focus on. So are there any people either domestically or overseas working in missions that you're especially grateful for?
I love each of our global partners. We have amazing global partners, and we've got people. It's really amazing the people that we currently have here, because before we kind of started this, our missions ministry is still kind of in its infancy. We've just really been focusing intentionally on building and creating this ministry over the last couple of years. And so there's exciting things coming up. This last January, we announced that we're ready to start launching rope teams, which are teams that are going to be caring for each of our global partners. And that word comes from a conversation in 1792 when William Carey, the father of the modern missionary movement, was told, hey, there's this gold mine of souls in India. Will you go down and minister to them? And he said, I will go down, but you must hold the rope. And so it's this picture of a team of people that are supporting and caring and coming alongside these missionaries. And so we're trying to create these teams for our global partners to do that. And so as we're starting this, we're still in its infancy of our missions ministry. But I love each of our global partners. We've got people that are evangelists, Mike Silva and Reed Saunders. We've got people that are ministering to Africa, Dave Irby with his sports ministry. We've got people that are ministering to the Latin American countries. We've got people that are working in Europe and Asia. We've got people, one of them just moved back, Jeremy Tice just moved back, and their ministry is now preparing and equipping the next generation of missionaries to go out. And so they're at a university and they're equipping the students to go out. And so we've got people from a broad range of locations and places. We've got global partners that are ministering in the Muslim world. And so a place that can be kind of dangerous to go, but they're building relationships with the people there and providing the things that they need, building those relationships and being able to then speak into their lives because they've built that trust. So I love each of our global partners and what God is doing in distinct and unique ways for them based on their gifts.
So we talked about your work in missions. We gave a tease about our upcoming podcast about life groups, which we'll go more in depth with. And I think it's necessary at a church that's on the larger side. So are there other aspects besides visitations of your associate pastor title that you have to fulfill?
In general, I love doing things that bring people together. So in our life groups, I love multi-generational groups. I love things that will bring people together with different experiences at different stages of life. I love in our missions, even in just life groups and mission, those you can't really have a life that's lived on mission without being together with other people. And you can't really be in a life group and being discipled and discipling others without being on mission. And so even just those ministries go so well together. So I love to bring people together. And so whether it's a community outreach or event, when we've done the Lights at Morning Star, when we've done Backpack Blessings, Christmas Blessings, we used to do Feed Salem, those kind of events that bring the people in the building into the community. Those I think are important. And we don't do some of those events anymore, but we are trying to focus on long-term, ongoing, relational ministry outside of the church. And so because God is doing so many great things in so many ministries already, we want to equip and encourage our people to go out and partner with that. So anytime I can learn more about what is happening in the community and hopefully inspire our people to do that, that's what I try to do.
Well, you are an encourager and you are an inspiring Associate Pastor Jared Boltman. So thank you for all that you do. You'd mentioned coming to the Lord about 4 weeks before you started attending Morning Star. So after you did, how long was it before you were being considered to take the associate pastor position?
Well, I came to the Lord 4 weeks after going to the Bible study that I was at. It took me 4 weeks to do that. And then it was from April to December when I finally started attending Morning Star. So it was quite a few months. And that was just I was a lay person. I was attending. I was so new and so young in just even seeing what is church life like, what do I do? It was just so new for me. And so I was really involved in the college group from February of 2000 up until 2005, when John, the Credo pastor, then went into become a chaplain. And he was a person I confided in, and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to vocational ministry. What do I do? What does that look like?" So he helped me get into seminary, and so then I started seminary from 05 to 09, and I had been I had come on staff as an intern in the kids ministry in 2006 while I was in seminary, and then I was a part-time director in 07. And then after I graduated seminary, I became full-time as a pastor in January of 2010. And so, Mike, you know baseball. You and I are baseball guys. We have this love of baseball. And so one thing I say about kind of my ministry here at Morning Star is I'm a utility player. I've been a utility player. In baseball, that's the guy that can play different positions. He's not just a shortstop, maybe he's shortstop and left field and occasionally first base, right? Those kinds of things. So in my time here at Morning Star, I've been in kids ministry. I've done what we used to call adult education, so various Bible study classes and those kinds of things. I originally went to seminary because I wanted to do the college ministry. I wanted to go into that. That's what I thought the Lord was preparing me for.
Because your mentor figure, John, was leaving, and you saw a need.
I just saw, not necessarily that, just like, I love what he's doing. I want to be a part of that. That was what it originally was. And so, thinking that's what I was going to do and wanting to do. And then, okay, there's this opportunity in kids ministry. I love what God's doing there. And then doing some pastoral care visitations, doing the adult education, and then we changed it to House of Learning Bible study classes, and then community groups, which then became life groups, and then most recently adding missions to that. And so I've done lots of different things, and I love that. I love the things that I've seen and learned from those different things. And so I try not to hold too tightly or closely to the things that I'm doing, and just to see where God is going to lead me. And so, I've been on staff since July 1st of 07, and I've been a pastor since January 1st of 2010. So I've been here for quite a long time.
So how is it now being a full-timer versus bivocational days when you're doing more than one job, and part of it's in the church or in ministry, and then part of it's out in the world?
Yeah, I loved that time, and I still try to be out in the world as much as I can. I think it's easy at times for pastors to get sort of in a bubble or a cocoon, and so we all have to intentionally have some time to be out in the community. But it is interesting because when I was in seminary and when I was working, there's just, the more time that you spend, I'll say this, the more time that you spend with people, the more you know them, the more trust you have built up with them, and the more that you can speak into their lives and allow them to speak into your life. And so it is when you're in full-time ministry, it takes more effort, more work to build those relationships outside of the church community and church building. And so it was very easy when I was a student or when I was just serving, not on staff yet, because I had a lot of connections with people in various other places. And so I have to be more intentional about meeting our neighbors and talking to our people than I used to in the past, because being a pastor is not, 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. It's, you get phone calls late at night, and you take things home and you worry about them, and you wonder how can I disciple people better? How can I walk with them? How can I, it's a 24/7. I don't want to call it a job. It's a 24/7 calling, just to be prepared to walk with people. So it is more difficult.
So give us some wise advice and counsel, Jared, for people who are working or volunteering in ministries, whether it's full-time or part-time or alongside other jobs even. You're a happily married husband. You've got 2 beautiful daughters. How do you manage your time in ways that allow yourself to just be Jared, to just be dad, to just be the husband, and not be the pastor of Morning Star? Right? Are you able to turn it off?
That is a great question, because the hope is that as soon as you get home, you can turn it off and not have to worry about those things. But it's always kind of there, at least for me. I'll only speak for me. It's kind of there running in the background. Man, I wonder how such and such person is doing. They haven't really been around, and they're not really communicating. And or somebody else is going through, a cancer diagnosis, and it's back for the third time. These are challenging things that I can't just turn off. However, it's so important to just have an intentional approach with your family to be present there. So I'll say to anybody who's, whatever your job is, you give 100% to that job, but you can't leave nothing for your family. You've got to prioritize your time for your family as well. So whatever your passions or hobbies or job is that you love, you got to have that for your family as well. And so I don't think anybody's going to look back at the end of their life and say, I wish I would have worked more. I think what I hear over and over again as I'm with people on their at the end of their life on their deathbed is, I wish I would have been more present in my relationships. And so I try to prioritize that, to be with my family and with the people that I love. I'm not perfect at that. I'll tell you that for sure. But that's so important. So I would encourage people that are, if you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, I know it's hard to do. It's easy to say, prioritize time with your family. Whether that means cutting something out, whether that means saying no to something, you got to prioritize your family.
I'm guessing that many of us would be better at that if we held ourselves to some accountability, a trusted friend, the kind that would be willing to get in our face and say, you know what, you blew it that weekend and you need to do this. So we need to pray about that.
Yep. Iron
sharpening iron, What's the Bible verse say? Wounds of a friend are better than the kisses of an enemy.
Yeah. I have absolutely loved times in my life where I've had a Paul, a Timothy, and a Barnabas, somebody who is pouring into me with wisdom and maturity and advice, and somebody who's right alongside me, we're iron sharpening iron, and somebody else that I can pour into and disciple and mentor. And to have all three of those is really valuable. If we've just got somebody that's pouring into us and we're just taking in, we're just gaining knowledge and wisdom, or we're only receiving, that's a problem. If we're only constantly pouring out, if we're only constantly giving to people that are newer in their faith than us, then that's also a problem. And so I think it's really wise and important to have all of those things.
Jared, you'd mentioned that the young adult ministry credo was instrumental in helping you grow in the Word and build your faith. Over your many years at Morning Star, are there other outreaches that you were especially grateful to see at Morning Star?
Yeah, I think, that was the big one. It was such a formative time because I was very young and new in my faith. But also the community groups, now life groups ministry, has been really important for my wife and I, and for our friends at kind of similar stages. I remember being in a young marrieds group within the first year that we were married, and that was great because we kind of realized, other couples are going through some of these same things that we were going through in our first year of marriage, and it's not. There were times that we struggled and times that we argued about things, and we realized, other people do this too. That's okay. And so how do we work through some of these things, and how do we see God working in our lives, and how do we encourage each other through that season? And so I would say that the community groups, life groups ministry have been a big a big part of that.
You and I've had this discussion a bunch of times. I certainly agree with you, and part of me prefers seeing a multi-generational model. We had this one life group, community group, where we had lovely young women. Courtney was in her 20s, whereas Cass is probably in his late 70s or 80s by then, but we were tight. We did indeed live life together. And conversely, I certainly see the need for groups that have people they can relate with. I've had friends who have said, yeah, enjoy your life groups that start at 7:30 at night, but my kid goes to bed at 7:30. So they went and started their own on a Sunday afternoon. So I think there's also a need for people in similar situations to fellowship together. Yeah. So is there a right or wrong or a balance to be found when it comes to these life groups?
I think it's important to look at the where each group is. There's definitely not a formula for groups, and we definitely can't have no structure and no accountability and no guidance and direction. So I think there's a lot of wiggle room in between there. There's a lot of value to be found in multiple generations of people. For example, that young married group that we were in, if we had remained in that group forever, then we would only be gaining experiences from people who were in that exact phase of life that we were in. And so I see a lot of value from other people that are further down the road that have experienced that can say, hey, this is not going to last forever, these struggles, or hey, here's some things to do in this situation. And so that group was great because we did have an older couple that was kind of mentoring us, and we were in that group for a year. They said, hey, we're going to be here together for a year, and then you need to go out and either join another group or start another group. And so that was a great opportunity. That was in 2006, 2007. So I've tried to use some of those things, not just that you can only stay together for a year. There's a balance too, because the goal is for people to become close and tight knit and to love each other. And so you don't want to split that apart. So we use just the perspective shift of multiplying our groups rather than dividing our groups, and helping people see that the value that they have received by joining a group, when we multiply our groups, others can then experience the same things that they have. So yeah, it's hard to, there's definitely no formula.
I was able to sit in on an earlier podcast when Jacob Mayhew was hosting it, and it was with Judy, a lovely retiree, and my daughter Kate, who's 20.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a mentor-mentee relationship. They're actually buds. So shout out to Jen Tompkins for seeing a need for combining different generations together and leading them together at a Thursday women's Bible study. Yeah. So throw stuff up against the wall, Jared. Do you have any dreams or visions? What would you love to see Morning Star do in the future to spread the love of Jesus to this community, to the rest of the world?
Yeah. I would love to see us live out our mission, vision, and values as a church, where we see a church that is equipped and unafraid to live and share the gospel wherever we're at. We have that concrete number of 20,000 people over the next 5 years. I would love for each person, each family to take hold of that and run with it. I would love to see every single person in our church involved in a life group. I would love to see our life groups overflowing so much that we have more people attending life groups than we have people attending our church, because our groups are reaching out to their neighbors and their families and their coworkers, and people are coming to those groups as a first step to get involved in just exploring who God is. And then as they get to meet these people and they see that God is good and these people are good because God loves them, then they start attending church. I would love to see every one of our global partners have a team of people that is surrounding them and caring for them. I would love to see every life group involved in some ongoing relational ministry that already exists in our community. So those are a few of the things that I see as possible and things that I am trying to help our teams work towards. I think it's important to see that God wants each of us to be continually growing in our walk with the Lord, and that shouldn't be a stressful thing. That should be an inspiring and encouraging thing. He loves us too much for us to just stay where we're at. He loves us as we are, but he's constantly refining and molding us in his image even more day by day. And so I hope that is something that people want to walk towards, not work towards, walk towards. It's an important distinction.
No matter how it looks, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
So tell us about your lovely wife, Rayanna, who, like you, likes being behind the scenes, but contributes in so many ways at Morning Star. Are there things that she does that the average person might not be aware of?
Well, what's the old adage, like your better half or whatever? Like, there's no doubt she is by far the better half of us. I married way above my pay grade. She's amazing. She is strong in all the areas that I am weak. She is so kind. She's so loving. She continually gives and gives and gives. She has such a caring soul and personality, and she's also an introvert. So she's, she doesn't. It does not come naturally to her, but she certainly loves people. So she is. Since we've had our youngest daughter, she hasn't been in the kids ministry, but she did that for many, many years, serving faithfully in the kids ministry as a teacher in various different classrooms through the years. Anytime we're doing a big, church-wide project, she certainly is there with me, helping out with a lot of things. And so it's fun as we have our oldest daughter, Maya, who's 8.5. And so she's starting to help out with things and has been for a couple of years. And so to do things together as a family is it's just a special thing. So Rayanna she is somebody that I can always be open and honest with, and somebody that I, not only do I value her input and position and perspective on things, but I seek it out, and I love to walk through life with her as my beautiful bride, and it's so fun to go on adventures together. We're going on our first vacation in the last couple of years. It's been 2 years since we've had a vacation at all.
Oh, that's too long.
I know, it's way too long. We're going away for a few days at the coast here in a couple of weeks, and so it'll be a lot of fun to just go on adventures at the beach, and so. How
exciting. Jared, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for sharing more about yourself and the church and the ministries here at Morning Star. Do you have anything that stands out in your mind as not a pastor, but as a dad? What are you grateful for that goes on at Morning Star that you're putting before these beautiful little girls of yours?
I am grateful that this is a church that values caring for, equipping, and loving people at all ages of life. And so I am so thankful that my daughter, 8.5, Maya, and my daughter, 1.5, Eva, from the moment they are in the nursery to their final breath, whenever that is, there's always something for everybody. And it is staffed by and equipped with volunteers that love and care for people. So I love that there's always something to encourage, inspire, and spur each person on to follow the Lord and to love Him for their lives. And so I love that we're in a church that values every stage of life. Louis does an amazing job in our kids ministry as the leader of that whole team, but the whole staff, Candace and Savannah and Brett, they all do a wonderful job of caring for kids. And so as a father with young kids right now, I'm really thankful for that.
So thanks for your leadership, your friendship, your example, indeed, of keeping Jesus first. And may that never be relegated to a catchphrase. May that be a heartstring pulling mantra that remains important to us and central to our core being. So is there anything else that the Lord's put on your heart, Associate Pastor Jared Boltman, that you'd like to share with our friends in podcast land?
I would just want to say that if you're watching this, maybe you've been a believer for a long time, or maybe you're just kind of new to this whole Christianity thing, or maybe you're not even sure who Jesus is. I want to say that Jesus loves you, and Jesus has a plan for your life. No matter the challenges, the joys, the triumphs, the things that you're going through, whatever it is. And I just want to encourage you to seek him in his word. I want to encourage you to seek him in prayer and through other people. And allow yourself to be open to what God is doing. He's at work. You might not see it, but he's at work. And so dive into God's word, be in God's world, and see God's works, because he's worth it. He's worth it.
Thanks to Cooper Anderson and Jacob Mayhew for getting the Morning Star podcast off the ground in the first place. Like Pastor Jared said, if you're not currently plugged into a church, feel free to join us at Morning Star Community Church. We have services Sunday mornings at 9 and 11, conveniently off the Kubler Boulevard exit of I-5, directly across from Costco. You can find out more at mstar.church. And if you're unable to join us in person, we do live stream our services at mstar.live. So thanks so much again for joining us on the Morning Star podcast. And thank you, Pastor Jared Boltman.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Morning Star podcast. Join us again next time as we display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life.